Don't judge me. Had to make a quick pickup run, just a parking lot pickup. I didn't go inside anywhere, so don't nobody mention it to my mama in the spirit realm. But I had a thought. Actually, as I was preparing to leave the house this morning, I had a thought and I wanted to share it on live and possibly elaborate on it later on today after I've completed, some of the things that I have to do once I get home. But right now, at this particular moment in time, we are hearing a great deal about how heterosexual relationships are changing. And we're hearing that women are not accepting things that they used to accept. And women have become more demanding in heterosexual relationships. And because of that, men are having to learn emotional intelligence. They're having to learn how to actually be emotionally present and emotionally intimate with the woman, with the romantic partners in their lives, which is a skill that they haven't had to have in the past. And as I was thinking about that this morning, doing a little bit of laundry, grabbing my water, seeing that my groceries was ready to pick up and throwing up on some so I could come and pick up these groceries, it dawned on me, and this is why language is so important. This is why you guys will see me pause before I say something. This is why you'll see me take a moment before I completely articulate a thought. Because language is essential. What you call a thing and how you say a thing is essential. Language creates an image in your mind. Now, that is a way of thinking that everybody doesn't have. An actual picture image, it doesn't do that for everybody, but it creates a connotation. So sometimes a connotation is an actual picture image, and sometimes a connotation is just how you think about a thing, right? The cultural, um, the communal or collective cultural way of viewing a thing comes up with specific type of language. So today I was thinking about the fact that no matter where you look, whether it is the black community, whether it is the non-black community, whether it is in other communities of color, people are saying these women today are not like our mothers and grandmothers. And the women are saying where our mothers and grandmothers didn't have a choice, right? I read a meme the other day where the woman was commenting on the fact that she shared with her husband that women weren't able to have credit cards in their names or bank accounts in their name, in the United States, I think until the 60s or the 70s. I don't remember the exact date. So don't y'all crucify me in the comments. But she was sharing just that bit, that little factoid, with her husband. And he was shocked. But I want us to really gain an understanding and be honest with ourselves about what that means and what that meant for our mothers and our grandmothers. If a woman couldn't own property in her name, if a woman couldn't have a bank account in her name, if a woman couldn't get a credit card in her name, then that means that she was in partnership with men because she was forced to be. Yeah, that's what I mean. I want us to use the correct language for the thing. Because I think we are focusing on the fact that it couldn't happen, women weren't allowed to do it, without completely focusing on then what that means. Then what that means is women were forced to be in partnership with men. They were forced. It doesn't mean, like we say it in a way that's so light. Oh, women couldn't get. I hate to have to drive up in these people's driveway, but I done took a wrong turn at Albuquerque. I apologize, y'all. Y'all surely is pretty. We say it kind of lightly to me. We say it kind of lightly, and I want us to say the whole thing, right? You know how we'll say, oh, they said the quiet part out loud. I be trying to say the quiet part out loud. I think it's important to say the quiet part out loud. So let's go over that again. If a grown ass woman with a job couldn't get a house in her name, a grown ass woman with a job couldn't get a checking account, if a grown ass woman with a job couldn't get a credit card in her name, she was forced to be in partnership with a man. Forced, right? We got to think about what was actually happening. So that was what was happening here in North America, specifically the United States, during the times of our mothers and our aunties and our grandmothers and our great grandmothers. That was how they were forcing women to be in partnership with men. It was an act of force. You did not have a choice. My mother told me that the reason she married daddy was because she wanted to get out of her mother's house. And there was no other way for her to get out. You see what I'm saying? That's force. That's forcing somebody. And you got to put all the pieces together of that. She couldn't go get her own apartment. She wasn't allowed. She couldn't, even though she had a job, go get a checking account. She wasn't allowed. Right? You got to think about all of these things. That's an act of force. Right? That's somebody making somebody do something whether they want to or not. That is society making you do something whether you want to or not. So that's from that perspective. The perspective that we consider to be, law, legalities, things like that. But where did those laws come from? So here in the United States, they pretend that there is a separation of church and state. So they pretend that the laws that we have here are not based on any particular religious belief. And that's the pretense. We all know that that's not true. We could stay here all day and give instances of that not being true. And it is especially glaringly clear that it's not true at this moment in time, at this political moment in time in the United States. But prior to any nation saying that there was a separation of church and state, the laws, most of the laws that were in place were called tradition. So they were a cultural tradition or they were religious edicts. So prior to them putting in a legal setting that a woman can't get a checking account, a woman can't own property, a woman can't get a credit card, prior to that, they created religious edicts that basically said the same thing. It's wrong. It's against the will of God for a woman to have her own home. And a woman who does that is sinful and bad. It's against the will of God for a woman to have a checking account. And a woman who does that is sinful and bad. It's against the will of God for a woman to have her own space, her autonomy, her sovereignty. And a woman who does that is sinful and bad. So that's the religious way that we were taught to look at it, even prior to it becoming a thing that had to do with laws or legalities. So let's take it on back further. Let's talk about culturally. You think about cultural aspects of things, cultural reasons that people do things or don't do things. Child, you live in a community with a bunch of retired folks. I know I can't see, so I ain't necessarily making fun. I'm just saying people's driving be so damn questionable. But anyway, culturally, it's very much similar to religious, right? The culturally passed down ways of being, very similar to the religious edicts, right? So you will say, an Igbo woman doesn't do that, an Amharic woman doesn't do that, you know? You would give your culture as the reason that you don't do it, you know? And to be completely honest, I feel that cultural norms and religious edicts hold a lot more weight as far as forcing people to do things that they don't want to do than legalities, than laws. I think that, those things hold a lot more weight. But the reality for us is that all of these establishments were saying the same thing. All of these establishments were saying it's wrong for a woman to have autonomy. It is either illegal, or it is displeasing to God, or it is against our cultural norms. All of these foundations were saying the same thing. All of these establishments were saying the same thing. So they all sought to force us to do things that we didn't want to do. So what does that tell you? What does that tell you? If something is established to force somebody to do something, why does something like that have to be established? Why does it have to be created? Because the consensus now, hold on, y'all. Lip is peeling and that's getting on my nerves. The consensus now, and this has been the case for a long time as well, it's just with social media, we probably hear it far too much, is that it is the nature of a person born, with a vagina to act a particular type of way. It is their nature. I submit to you that it's cultural to think that that's the nature of someone born with a vagina. It's cultural to have a particular way that you expect people with vaginas to act, and to say that people who act outside of that norm are unnatural. That's the same as cultural norms. And usually it's still based on those same religious edicts that I was just talking about. Usually it's not based on anything new either. It's those same religious edicts. But I asked the question, and I'm submitting it to y'all. I want y'all's answers. Why were all of these institutions put in place to force people to do things? Why does an institution like that have to be put in place? I ask you, query. Why does an institution like that have to be put in place? That's my question to you. Oh, Jesus. Wow, it is wild out here today. Right? Why? Why does something have to be put into place to force someone to do something? Where does that, where does the need for that come from? How does that become a need? I'm gonna go down to the next turn. I ain't gonna stop at this one. Too many people. Let me make this turn and then I'm gonna look at y'all's answers. That's what it's for, to control and dominate. But why? What is happening that makes people say we have got to put a rule in place to keep this from happening? What's happening? Something had to be happening to make the rule and the control necessary. Right? Why does the rule have to be put in place? Right? At my house, if I wake up in the morning and the dishes haven't been washed, and that happens 2 nights in a row, then I have to put a rule in place telling people to wash the dishes. If an entire culture decides to put a rule in place saying that women cannot have autonomy, what is the impetus for that rule? Something had to happen to make that rule necessary. They wouldn't have access to women otherwise. But my thought is that women were creating autonomous spaces for themselves and by themselves. And they were doing that in great numbers. Their autonomy was causing them to be, like you just said, it was causing people not to have access to them, and they were just creating their own space and just chilling by themselves in it, right? Their autonomy was a problem. And so society had to come together and remove it. Oh, this might be my target order already here waiting for me. Could that have happened? Hold on one second. Let me see. Hi. Ola Omi Amaloku? Okay. Can you just leave it on the back seat? Oh, hold on one second. Let me go to it. My target order. Right. Obviously. And this is hilarious to me because it leads to so many other thoughts. But if you had to create entire cultural norms, if you had to create entire religious edicts, and then even when you formed a new country, the United States was a new country being formed, you had to put those cultural norms and religious edicts into law. Because for this place, there were already people of so many different cultural backgrounds here, right? So they were like, okay, we're going to take these particular cultural norms and these particular religious edicts and make them the law. For you to do that lets us know off the bat that women were exercising a great deal of autonomy, and women were sovereign, and women were creating spaces for themselves that obviously you must not have had access to. And so you had to create a situation where you forced them to give you access. That has blown my mind. That has blown my mind. The fact that you want us to still, in 2024, in the year of Oshun 2024, you want us to still be in a position to be forced to give you access to us. So you got that. You got that whole piece. You got that whole premise. Yes. Yes. Exactly. And this is the next place I'm going to. So you got that whole premise. And to me, you know that having access to what we now have come to call women, but I don't use that term to exclude anybody. So like I said, words are important. What we call a thing, what we say a thing is important. So I don't mean that to the exclusion of anybody that this, foolish, racist, heteronormative society wouldn't call women. I'm not excluding anybody. I'm saying anybody who journeys under the sign of woman. That's what I'm going to say. So you got people like us who are called women. And now, right now, and for the, past centuries or whatever, we have been made to believe that we are the least necessary, that we are the lowest of the low. We are the lowest rung on the totem pole. We are the weaker sex. We are second class citizens. We are the helpmeets. We are the handmaidens. This is what we are made to believe. And not only that, but that it is natural and godly and divine and patriotic. And it is the norm for us to be that way. That's what we've been made to believe. When you created whole systems just to access what we got. You and for millennia have been creating systems and putting systems into place that you enforce militarily. You enforce these systems with violence just to have access to what we got. Just to can I just get a little taste of it? Because just like when we hold anything in captivity, You ain't gonna never get the full shine of it. You ain't gonna never get the full shine, right? I have two pythons right in my room. I'm not gonna get the behavior, the size, the communion with nature, anything that I could get from those pythons while they were out in nature. I'm only going to get a little snippet of it because they're in captivity. So you decide, well, it's best to hold women in captivity and have this is just a little snippet. This is just a little snippet of our magic. Just a little snippet of our magic that they can get. And you decide it's better to hold them in captivity and just get a little snippet of their magic than it is for them to be autonomous and possibly cut us off from all of it. That should let you know the degree to which your magic is essential in society, the degree to which your magic is essential in capitalism, essential in all of these systems of being. That alone should let you know. If you're ever doubting your worth, if you're ever doubting your entitlement, in the class last night, I said, we're not standing on business. We standing on. If you're ever doubting your entitlement, people created whole systems backed by the military just to have access to just a snippet of what you have to offer. Just a soussan, just a hair of what you have to offer. So that the totality of what you have to offer, is mind blowing. Is life changing. Is mountain moving. Right? That's how the totality of what you have to offer has to be. So yeah, that is my thought from this morning. I just wanted to share that with you guys. I done picked up my Whole Food groceries and my Target groceries. Nubia is not feeling well, so I'm gonna go home and make her some tea and then get on back to the academic drudgery of it all that I'm not dreading. Don't let me not make it sound like that. But it does get monotonous. So I love it, but it gets monotonous. So I'm gonna get on back to that. I love you guys. Please share, please comment. Let's keep the conversation going. I'm sure as I'm reading and researching today, more aspects of this may even come to mind. And if so, I'm gonna jump on here and talk about it some more. Right? But yeah, keep that in mind when you standing on entitlement. Right? All of those in mind. And we wish the lessons of life on everyone who is ignorant enough to wish us otherwise. Peace, y'all.